speech is something that is the most anti-American thing I've seen in a long time. Yield back.
Then I'll show you right here, Democratic Senator Gallego cross-examining another pick of Donald Trump, Charlton Allen, who's being picked to be on the Federal Labor Relations Authority, General Counsel. Let's take a look at what goes on here. Let's play it.
Mr. Allen, in the 1990s, you founded a conservative campus publication called the Carolina Review. If you look behind me, you'll see the front cover of an edition of the Carolina Review depicting Aaron Nelson, a Jewish candidate for student body president. Your magazine altered Nelson's photo depicting him with the horns and a pitchfork. Inside the article says the difference between Aaron Nelson is simple. He's Jewish. Yes or no, Mr. Nelson, do you stand by this depiction?
Well, first of all, in terms...
Turn your mic on. Your mic.
Sorry. I'm Mr. Allen, not Mr. Nelson. But in terms of that cover, I would, if I were 30 years ago advocating for the Review, I would say don't run that cover. I think it was a mistake. That said, if you look at full context of the article, you're taking a quote out of context.
Okay, so it may take the quote out of context, but that's not being taken out of context, right? The pitchfork with the horns?
Right.
Is that, right. Because that's kind of hard to get out of context.
In terms of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, our chief rival was the Blue Devils, still are the Blue Devils. And the cartoonist's intention was to make an analogy to that.
So everything happened was just a total coincidence that the Jewish candidate happened to have a pitchfork and horns, and that also at the same time inside the context, so the difference with Nelson is simple, he's Jewish, and the difference being between them and the Blue Devils. So the difference is that he is a Jewish versus a Blue Devil. Is that what your defense is?
No, sir. The point is this. Mr. Nelson voted not to fund a Christian group. He voted to fund the Jewish group. He voted to fund the pagan group. But on two separate times, he voted not to fund InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And it raises a conflict of interest when he was a member of a group that he voted for.
You certainly remember in detail this incident in question for someone who wants to forget it. So do you stand by the statement that was made of that time period regarding Mr. Nelson then?
What statement are you referring to?
Well, I would say overall this anti-Semitic statement and depiction of this gentleman.
I would not say that it's anti-Semitic. We were the group that was calling for the equal treatment of all student religions.
So it's not anti-Semitic to say the difference with Nelson is simple. He's Jewish. The difference between a Blue Devil and Nelson is the fact that he's Jewish. You stand by that then?
The point was this. He voted for the Jewish group, and on two separate occasions, he voted not to fund.
I'm Mary Trump. Yes, the other one of those. You might know my uncle is the authoritarian, convicted criminal con man currently wrecking the country from the safety of the Oval Office. But for the vast majority of my life, I've just known him as a...
Interesting things about him. Deep down, he's a very insecure person. He's very afraid.
Here is a sentence that only one person on Earth could ever say with this specific kind of authority. A sentence that carries the combined weight of a clinical degree, a documented family history, and a lifetime of first-hand observation no outside biographer or journalist could ever replicate. I think the greatest indictment of my grandparents is that they had 5 children, and in very different ways, every single one of them was a destroyed human being. That is Marielle. Trump, the president's own niece, a clinical psychologist by training, the daughter of Trump's late brother Fred Trump Jr., and one of the only people alive who watched Donald Trump become Donald Trump from inside the same house. She is not a pundit reading tea leaves from television footage. She is not a political rival scoring points. She is family, diagnosing family, in public, with a level of clinical precision that no comedian, no journalist, and no congressional witness could ever bring to the subject. Welcome to USA Press. Tonight we are laying out the complete, documented record of Mary Trump's ongoing public reckoning with her uncle. The $410 million inheritance, she says, destroyed him before he ever ran for office. Her real-time analysis of exactly why he melted down at a sitting CBS News anchor on live television, and her running commentary connecting decades-old family dysfunction to a presidency she predicted, years in advance, would be unspeakably awful. Let's get into it. Let's start with who Mary Trump actually is, because her credibility here is fundamentally different from anyone else we've covered on this channel. She holds a doctorate in clinical psychology. She is the daughter of Fred Trump, Jr. Donald Trump's older brother, a man who wanted to be a pilot rather than a real estate developer, who struggled with alcoholism for years, and who died in 1981 at just 42 years old, a death Mary has spent decades arguing was substantially accelerated by the crushing psychological environment their father created inside the family. Mary Trump became a household name in 2020 with the publication of her best-selling book, Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man, a work built not on secondhand reporting but on direct, lived experience inside the Trump family structure, combined with her own professional clinical training. She has continued that work in the years since, publishing a follow-up memoir titled Who Could Ever Love You, and building an independent media platform, a newsletter and video commentary operation, through which she delivers ongoing, real-time psychological analysis of her uncle's presidency as it unfolds. Now let's go to the most recent and most explosive piece of this record, her analysis of grandfather Fred Trump's quote, S-parenting, delivered in a newly published interview with former MSNBC host Joy Reid. The same Joy Reid, who's real.
No, Mr. Bartholomew, who won the 2020 election. We have seen that script. By the way, you should check with the White House. That script has been abandoned. They have a new one.
Well, my understanding from the 2020 election is we had an election.
And
Joe
who won
Biden
it?
Joe Biden was certified the winner of that election. That is a fact.
Who won the popular vote?
From what I recall in reporting at the time, that was Joe Biden.
And who won the Electoral College in the 2020 election?
Again, my recollection, and he served as president, Joe Biden would have been certified the winner of the Electoral College vote as well.
Did you discuss your answers to these questions with the White House before coming here today?
No.
Let me ask you, was the Capitol attacked on January 6th?
I don't know if I would use the term attacked. I mean, we had activity outside the Capitol, protests and such, and there was violence on the Capitol grounds.
You have to be now the author of the most obvious understatement that there was activity outside the Capitol on January 6th. Was it attacked? You've seen the videos. You're supposed to be the Inspector General. Capitol Police were injured. Some died. Was the Capitol attacked?
So again, it's more a term that you're using, attacked. There was protest activity. There was violence on Capitol grounds. Those people were prosecuted.
Well, there was protest activity?
There was protest activity. People went to the Capitol grounds. People entered the Capitol building, which is contrary, as far as I know, to law.
But you wouldn't agree with me that the Capitol was attacked?
I just don't agree with the term attack. When I think of attack, I
Were
think of
police
assaulting.
officers attacked on that day?
There was physical violence outside the Capitol that day.
But the Capitol Police weren't attacked?
So
What is it about that word that so troubles you?
It's not that I'm troubled by it. The term attack to me seems to imply like there was a coordinated effort to attack specific things.
Let me ask you.
There was physical violence associated with protests.
I regard
activity at the
these
Capitol.
kinds of questions as a test of your prospective independence. And so far, I think you're failing that test.
Okay.
And I hope my colleagues will agree that the Inspector General of the Department of Justice should recognize reality and facts for what they are.
Going back to Hal Duncan now for a moment, let me show you as Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen cross-examined Hal Duncan right here on a very important issue. Let's play it.
You're aware of the fact that the IRS has warned that this year's tax season was at risk due to staffing shortages. Are you aware of that fact?
Senator, obviously we're trying to...
I'm just asking you if you're aware of that fact, that they warned that this year's tax season efficiency was at risk because of staffing shortages. Are you
Senator,
not aware of that?
I'm not aware of the exact item you're referring to. I'm happy to take a look at it if it's in front of you.
Yeah.
But obviously everything that we are doing is toward a commitment for efficiency for the American people.
Well, in fact, you've had to rehire people who were fired at the IRS. That doesn't sound like it's more efficient to me. The same is true at FEMA. FEMA reinstated fire disaster response personnel ahead of the hurricane season because they were unprepared. Were you aware of that fact?
Senator, I'm not aware of this specific thing. That would be a FEMA-related item that I've been.
A lot of this, of course, feeds up through the OMB. Same is true of the National Weather Service. GSA cited staffing shortages on mission-critical needs. Were you aware of that?
I'd have to defer to the National Weather Service.
In fact,
on that
by
item.
early this year, an estimated 25,000 federal employees have been rehired after being initially terminated. Do you know how much that's cost the taxpayer rehiring the same people who were in the job before?
Senator, I don't have an estimate in front of me, but we're always working to optimize staffing levels.
Well, I have an estimate from the Partnership for Public Service. They're a nonpartisan entity. They say just that process of having to go through rehiring the same people that were fired cost the taxpayer $12 million. That doesn't sound more efficient to me. Mr. Duncan, your boss at OMB.
Do you expect him to try to run for a third time?
I think it's more likely that he just won't leave. I think that's the likelier scenario.
Just won't leave the presidency. How could that be?
I think, well, that's what Maduro did, I believe. And I think that he's perfectly capable. The only reason that didn't happen in 2020 is because there were still a few people in his administration who weren't willing to go along with that. But we are in very different territory 4 years later.
So even without an electoral mandate, he would try to carry on the presidency. That would be a moment.
Documented reporting on this administration we covered in an earlier episode. Speaking with Reed, Mary Trump described in detail what she characterized as a genuinely dysfunctional family environment dominated entirely by her grandfather, a man who exercised what she called enormous, almost totalizing influence over his 5 children, fostering what she described as an atmosphere built around competition, power, and money above all else. And the only thing literally that mattered to him was money, Mary Trump told Reed. And he taught his other children that lesson, too. Thankfully, my dad wasn't like that, but Donald certainly was. And he turned my entire family into a zero-sum game. There could only be one person. And my grandfather, for reasons that I still don't completely understand, picked Donald. She then delivered the specific, documented financial figure that anchors her entire argument. Over the course of Fred Trump's S life, he funneled at least $410 million, in today's dollars, to Donald Trump. A sum, Mary noted pointedly, that Donald ultimately squandered almost entirely. That figure is not Mary Trump's own invention or estimate. It traces directly back to a landmark 2018 New York Times investigation, which documented that Fred Trump Sr. transferred at least $413 million to his son over the decades, much of it through what the Times characterized as outright tax dodges during the 1990s, meaning Trump's entire self-mythology as a self-made billionaire rests on a foundation of inherited wealth transferred through legally dubious mechanisms, a fact independently verified by one of the most rigorous investigative newsrooms in the country, not simply asserted by an estranged family member with an axe to grind. It's worth dwelling a bit longer on Mary Trump's own father, Fred Trump Jr., because his story is the emotional and biographical foundation underneath everything she has said publicly about this family since. Fred Jr. was the eldest son, the one who was supposed to inherit the family real estate business by simple birth order, but who instead wanted to become a commercial airline pilot. A career path his father reportedly viewed as beneath the family's ambitions. Under sustained pressure to abandon that path and return to the family business, Fred Jr. eventually did return, only to struggle within a role he never wanted.
Donald Trump looks like death at the G7 as his health is collapsing. Folks, it's getting really bad. I just want to bring out the receipts and go one by one with you on everything that we've observed. This is a real photo of Donald Trump. This is what he looks like now. This isn't an AI image. He's really gained a massive amount of weight. While he was there with world leaders at the G7, he couldn't stand up straight. He was kind of hunched over, leaning forward. You see him right there with MBZ, the leader of the United Arab Emirates. Let's just zoom in on the right hand right now. You see what the right hand looks like? What about the left hand? Let's zoom in. He's got this visible crack mark on his left hand. I'm not sure if that's an injection site, but both of his hands you see are discolored and rotting away. And it's not just his kind of physical weight. It's not just the hands that are rotting. Take a look at this photo of him, Zelensky, Rubio. Zoom in on his legs right there. I mean, do you see how swollen the entire legs are right there, going all the way down to his feet right there? I'll show you right here. Prime Minister Carney and world leaders would try to talk with Donald Trump. And, I'll show you what kind of Carney's conversation with Donald Trump was like right there. But they have to repeat themselves over and over again, and so Carney, I'll show you the clip a little later in this video. He goes, "Donald, we did a cap, Donald, a cap, a hard line, a hard line, a hard line. I thought you'd like it, Donald. I thought you'd like it, Donald. Yes, we're doing this EV deal with China, but it's a hard line. It's a cap. It's a cap." They have to repeat it over and over. World leaders know that Donald Trump is cognitively and physically declining. We all know. It's just American corporate news doesn't cover it, but you can literally see. Look how Carney is looking at Donald Trump. He's looking at the way, if you've had a family member with the unfortunate situation of having them in hospice care and they are clearly not there, and you're looking at them and you're like, I know you're physically there, but you're not there. And look at him. I mean, here he is all alone on the stage with G7 leaders. Like people don't know how to even interact with him. We need to watch this whole video. I want to go again, receipt by receipt, hear what's going on. So at one point, you have French President Emmanuel Macron say, okay, we're going to take our group photo right now. And Donald Trump is just completely unaware that everyone else is posing for a photo. I mean, we have what the ultimate photo looks like, and Donald Trump's looking away. But here he is just in that video. Let's just watch this video. Let's play it.
Regardez les dents. May, could you have a look to this guy?
Tournez-vous. Regardez-les, derrière vous.
Georgia, you have the official.
Then when Donald Trump was on stage with the G7 leaders, a confused Trump was wandering off in the wrong direction, and they had to guide him back in front of the G7 world leaders. You can watch this for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We straight into the
The other side. The other side.
My wonderful
We go there.
How are you?
Hello, my friend. How are you? How are you?
I'm good.
You have Donald Trump grabbing the hand of India's Prime Minister Modi. He grabs the hand and the wrist for support because he was going to fall over. You can watch for yourself. Let's play it.
Worth financially, the more you're worth as a human being. And he has a very, very deep void that he's trying desperately to fill. And money is his preferred way to do that. Of course, it's not going to work because we see these lawsuits becoming increasingly frequent, and the numbers are getting bigger and bigger. And he doesn't let anything go ever, even if he has indeed won, in a sense. Like I defy him to prove what his damages are. He's back in the White House. He's making money hand over fist. And I think there are cases in which the lawsuit is vengeful. It's to get retribution. I think Letitia James Comey, but sometimes it's a mechanism to simply to enrich himself in a very easy way. He has a track record here suing media corporations, for example, and despite the fact that they're frivolous, they settle to his benefit. So he's not going to stop. I mean, he's suing me for $100 million. So, and I think that he understands now that there are bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. I mean, but really taxpayers would be the ones paying these out, which is extraordinary. I wonder how Americans feel about that. So with all the developments in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz found himself having to talk.
Developing what Mary has described in her writing as a severe drinking problem that the family, by her account, largely responded to with contempt rather than support. He died in 1981 at just 42 years old, and Mary Trump has argued across both of her books that Donald Trump's father used Fred J. Adott, quote, S struggles and eventual death as a kind of morality lesson for his remaining children. Proof in the family's internal mythology of what happened to those who were not sufficiently ruthless. That is the direct, personal stake Mary Trump carries into every single public statement she makes about her uncle. She is not simply critiquing a politician from a comfortable ideological distance. She is processing, in public, the specific family system she believes contributed to her own father's early death. If you're finding this history as sharp as we do, hit that like button right now and subscribe to USA Press. Because this is exactly the kind of full context, receipts-first breakdown we live for, tracing a family's internal reckoning that no outside reporter could ever access on their own. Share this with someone who's never heard the actual dollar figures behind Trump's self-made mythology. It's also worth noting that Mary Trump's willingness to expose her own family extends well beyond her Uncle Donald specifically. Years earlier, CBS News reported that Trump's older sister, Marianne Trump Barry, a retired federal judge who has generally avoided public criticism of her brother, had made sharply critical comments about him in what she believed were private conversations, comments that Mary Trump herself secretly recorded and later provided to journalists. Those tapes captured Marianne, in her own unguarded words, expressing genuine alarm about her brother's fitness and character. Commentary that would never have reached the public had Mary Trump not made the deliberate choice to document and release it. That single decision tells you something important about how far Mary Trump has been willing to go in this project. She has been willing to record and expose even her own aunt's private, unguarded family conversations if she believed the public interest in understanding this family outweighed the loyalty typically owed to relatives who have chosen to stay silent. Now let's talk about the moment that gave this entire report its title, because it happened in real time, on live television, and Mary Trump was watching it unfold with a specific...
And this video I showed you yesterday, right, where Donald Trump was like shaking hands with French President Emmanuel Macron, and Trump lacked the strength in his right arm to shake Macron's hand. You can see for yourself here. Let's play it.
So I want to congratulate the president. Last night, Cyril Gane won the fight against a great fighter, supposed to be unbeatable, and that was it. Cyril is from France. Did you watch the fight?
Yeah, not in direct, but I saw it this morning.
That was a great fight. It was a great evening at the White House.
I was very proud, Cyril.
Thank you.
Bienvenue.
And then the same thing we saw with Prime Minister Modi grabbing the hand. And we've seen Donald Trump have to do that with Melania a lot, also using her as kind of as a way to keep his balance. He's really losing his balance before our eyes. Here he does it. I showed you this clip yesterday, but I want to tie this all together with Brigitte Macron, French President Emmanuel Macron's wife. So you can see here. Let's just play this clip right now.
Thank you.
And then, of course, Donald Trump just doesn't even know basic facts. Like, he doesn't know where Qatar is on a map. He tells the Emir of Qatar that Qatar shares a land border with Iran. It doesn't. You'd actually have to cross 3 countries. It's across the Persian Gulf, but it doesn't share a land border. You can see for yourself what he says right here. Let's play this clip.
Any money in Iran. Working with Qatar and the people of Qatar was really a pleasure. They were tough. They were strong. You know, they are the closest to Iran physically. So with other countries, I noticed I had to travel about 45 minutes to get there. With you, you could walk right across the border. So you were in a more dangerous position.
I know that's deeply disturbing, deeply, deeply disturbing. Then when Donald Trump's with the Emir of Abu Dhabi or the president of the United Arab Emirates, Donald Trump starts talking about having dinner at Versailles, and then he just kind of starts rambling about how the stock market's great. He goes from that he had dinner at Versailles and it's amazing to the market. It's very weird. Here, play this clip.
So, well, I'm a fan of beautiful places. And I was leaving in the afternoon, and then the French president, who happens to be a very nice man, invited me to dinner at Versailles. And Versailles is not a gold leaf. Versailles is the real deal. And I said, I'd like to do it. I mean, you know, all it means is that I get home later in the evening, meaning early in the morning, and I'm not a big sleeper anyway. I'll be in the Oval Office I won't lose any time in the Oval Office. So I have to say this, our country is doing really well. We're doing better than we've ever done as a country. The stock market's the highest, everything's the highest, 401k.
And then when Donald Trump met with French President Emmanuel Macron, all he wanted to do was talk about the UFC fight. And he's like, I called you last night to talk about the French fighter, Here's what he says. Let's play it. And that's what Trump continuously was talking about with Macron, the French fighter. Do you know the French fighter? He says it again. Here, play this clip.
Happened, but had two very good conversations yesterday. We'll be talking about it. And we had a really exciting, I think maybe one of the most incredible evenings in the history of the White House. We had an evening last night with the fighters, and I was very happy. I called last night, very late last night, to congratulate you, because in the heavyweight division, a French fighter won. I don't know, is that maybe more important than the World Cup? To some people it might be. To some people it might be. You have a good team in the World Cup. Very good team, but you have good fighters too. And you're a great country, and it's an honor to be with you. Thank you very much.
And then we've also seen this a lot lately, where Donald Trump projects how physically attracted he is to male reporters. He attacks the female reporters. We've seen that, right? He calls them piggy. He calls them the B word. He says horrible things about female reporters. Remember all those videos where we see the just the kind of lashing out. When it comes to the male reporters, Donald Trump appears physically attracted to them. He does this a lot. You're so handsome. You're so good looking. And so while Donald Trump was with, again, the president of the United Arab Emirates, that's what he was talking about. Oh, this man's so handsome. He's really good looking. Here, play this clip.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding this.
What a nice looking person. Is he from your country? Is he from your country?
Absolutely.
No, he's got such a nice way about him. My people are they're so mean. Look at him. The handsome guy can put him. Be careful. No, I can put him in a movie right now. Go ahead.
And then just hearing Donald Trump talk about how he never wanted regime change, and that was never something that he's ever cared about, when obviously the whole thing he's been saying over and over again was regime change. And now he's saying, I don't care about regime change. I want to show you this data point right here. Let's play it.
Country. So, again, I don't believe the regime change. You know, I've watched regime changes for years. They never work. It has to just happen. I can tell you this is a country where
it's never enough. And I've written about this, and it's fascinating to me how it continues to be true, but it's becoming increasingly true. The more power he gets, the more wealth he amasses, the more he looks back to engage in revisionist history in order to convince himself and everybody around him that he actually won everything. So I think it's pretty simple, actually. Donald is a deeply insecure person. And in my family, being a loser was literally the worst thing you could possibly be. It was deserving of humiliation and worse. So he is still trying to rewrite that narrative to protect his fragile ego.
So, as you know, this week, he did actually file a lawsuit against the IRS, and it seeks a $10 billion taxpayer-financed payout over the leaking of his tax returns some years back. And last October, he also demanded $230 million from the Justice Department as compensation for the federal criminal investigations that he faced after losing in 2020. What's this really about? I mean, you mentioned money. Is that what it's all about?
Yes. It is indeed, because Donald, it's never, as I said, it is never enough, because going back for decades, money is the only thing that gives people in my family a sense of self-worth. So the more your work
to the White House officials as well as the president in the last week. And here's some of what he said about those talks. Let's watch.
This is what's so hard to deal with this president. You have to know the psychology of how to do it. Look, I know who I'm dealing with, and I know the reason that he was calling me was he needed something from us. He needed it not because this is a horrific situation of a violation of human rights, the potential murder of Minnesotans, an assault on our state that is unprecedented, I think, in American history. The reason he was calling was his poll numbers dropped and it looked bad on TV.
Do you agree there's a psychology involved in talking to the president? And if so, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I agree with Governor Walz completely. Donald is not the least bit concerned about the violence that's being perpetrated. In fact, he's ordering it to be perpetrated. His goal here is to create circumstances in American cities that either lead to Americans staying home and keeping silent, or to clashes like we've seen in Minnesota that can give him the opportunity to invoke the Insurrection Act or declare martial law. I think that the time of appeasement is over. We've seen this play out on the world stage as well. People are finally starting to realize that the worst thing to do is to capitulate to Donald, because he sees that as an opportunity to try to get more. People need to stand up and stop playing ball with him and draw a line in the sand. I think that negotiating with an administration that never operates in good faith is a very bad strategy. And again, it only leads to a situation in which he continues to have the upper hand.
Mary, as you look ahead, what are your gravest concerns about this administration relative to the country?
My gravest concern is that there is nobody in a position to do anything about it who will try at least to slow this down. What we've seen since January 1st has been, on the one hand, not surprising, but just a shockingly quick decline of America, both domestically and internationally. So we're not just looking at a situation in which American institutions continue to be dismantled. We're not just looking at a situation in which essentially a Gestapo is being unleashed on the American people. We're looking at the possibility that the Trump regime is going to unravel the post-World War II order.
Trained eye of someone who has spent her entire life studying exactly this man's psychology. On April 27th, 2026, President Trump sat down with CBS's Norah O'Donnell for a 60 minutes interview taped the day after a heavily armed gunman, identified as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, stormed through security at the White House Correspondents Association dinner at the Washington Hilton, exchanging gunfire with law enforcement before being apprehended. Trump, Melania, cabinet members, and lawmakers were evacuated from the ballroom, and the dinner was ultimately cancelled entirely. The interview was meant to be a straightforward opportunity for Trump to describe his own experience of the shooting. Instead, it became one of the most genuinely revealing unscripted moments of his entire second term. O'Donnell, discussing the suspect's motivations, read directly from what officials described as Allen's manifesto, a document he had reportedly emailed to family members shortly before the attack, listing administration officials as targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. She read one specific line aloud, on camera, directly to the President of the United States. "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." She then asked, simply and directly, "What's your reaction to that?" And Trump's response is worth quoting in its entirety, because every single word of it reveals something. "Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people. Horrible people." Yeah, he did write that. "I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody. I'm not a pedophile," he continued, growing visibly more agitated. "You read that crap from some sick person? I got associated with all. Stuff that has nothing." He then pivoted, unprompted, to a defense of his own legal record. "I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that we're involved with. Let's say Epstein or other things." When O'Donnell gently reminded him, "Mr. President, these are the gunman's words," Trump cut her off entirely. Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview." As she attempted to continue, he added one final, hissed line, "You're disgraceful." There is more from that same interview worth including, because Trump's other responses that night reinforce exactly the pattern Mary Trump would go on to diagnose. When O'Donnell pressed him on the manifesto's claim that hotel security showed this level of incompetence, which the shooter apparently viewed as insane, Trump pivoted immediately to praising his own security detail while landing a jab at the gunman himself. Well, he was pretty incompetent too, because he got caught. And he got caught pretty easily. So I'd say he was pretty incompetent too. He also used the interview to lobby, in real time, for the correspondents' dinner to be rescheduled within 30 days.
And you can see over here as well, and we can just play the B-roll for this one, that he can barely lift his right arm. You see that right there? We'll show you B-roll here also of him trying to walk down the stairs when he was arriving in France. It was a very rough entrance as well. I'll show you here when French President Emmanuel Macron alerts Donald Trump that the head of Egypt, that the leader of Egypt, Sisi, is right there. And Donald Trump is like lost, and Macron has to say, do you know who this is? This is the leader of Egypt, Donald. This is Sisi. This is the leader of Egypt, Donald. Do you know who this guy is? And then Donald Trump clearly doesn't know who he's even talking to. Here, let's play this clip right here.
Did you see President Sisi? Yes.
I never decided to stroke my voucher.
Now I'll show you when he was with Canadian Prime Minister Carney. I'll show you this first one, about 18 seconds or so of this. You have Prime Minister Carney's selling Donald Trump on Chinese electric vehicles being purchased by Canada right now. And this is in retaliation for United States tariffs against Canada. And then just watch how Carney talks to him, though. Less than 3, and it's caught on hot mic, but less than 3% of our market, 49,000 vehicles. It's a cap. We capped it. Hard line. I thought you'd like it. And then Donald Trump goes, good. I like it. Good. I like it. Watch this for yourself here. Let's play it. And then take a look at this one over here. This is sound enhanced and zoom in by an account called Table Salt. Here you go. You can see the zoom in right here. Here, play this clip. And this is how world leaders had to talk to him. All the world leaders were talking to him like this. Here's Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Here's how she's trying to, speak with him. Here, let's play this clip. Look, if you're in this community, you're paying attention. You know what's happening, and a lot of what's happening, it's directly affecting your Medicare. Plans are being discontinued, premiums are going up, and the broker you might have talked to probably pushing Medicare Advantage plans even if they aren't right for you. That's why I want you to know about Chapter. They're the only advisors who compare every Medicare plan in the country. Thousands of people from this community have already used them. One viewer, Kevin in Florida, is saving $2,100 a year. Another, Stephen, finally has a plan that covers his dialysis. And for the Meidas Mighty, a call with Chapter is free and takes just 20 minutes. So if you're on the right plan, they'll tell you. And if not, they'll help you find a plan that fits your needs. I want you to know that we've gotten such incredible feedback from the Meidas Mighty about Chapter. Frankly, it is overwhelming the positivity that is out there for Chapter. And so I'm so glad to be affiliated with it. I'm so glad you're all having great experiences. So call 82 Medicare today to speak with Chapter. That is 82 Medicare, and feel confident in your Medicare coverage.
So Donald finally emerged from whatever cave he was hiding in over the last few days, and he's exactly the same. I know, shocking. He came out to make some big announcements that turned out to be meaningless, really. But in the midst of it all, he managed to threaten yet another blue state, Colorado this time. We'll get to that.
I think it's really bad for a crazy person to be able to cancel something like this, and specifically asking her to relay that request to the Correspondents Association directly, as though the anchor sitting across from him functioned as a personal messenger to the organization rather than an independent journalist covering the story. Now, watch what actually happened in that exchange, because it is genuinely remarkable once you slow it down. O'Donnell never once suggested that the gunman's manifesto was accurate, that Trump was in fact a rapist, a pedophile, or a traitor. She simply read a direct quote from a documented piece of evidence relevant to a shooting that had happened at an event the president himself attended less than 24 hours earlier. It is worth noting, and worth being factually precise about, that Trump has in fact been found liable by a civil jury for sexually abusing writer E. Jean Carroll, a legal finding that exists on the public record regardless of how Trump characterizes it. But O'Donnell did not even raise that fact directly in this specific exchange. She simply quoted the shooter's own words back to him and asked for his reaction. Trump's response was not, "That's an unfounded and horrible thing for anyone to write," a response that would have addressed the substance without personalizing the accusation. Instead, he immediately, defensively, and repeatedly denied being the specific things the manifesto described, before the interview had even established that he believed the manifesto was referring to him at all. He essentially confirmed, through the specific architecture of his own defensive denial, exactly what he was afraid people would conclude: that he understood himself to be the pedophile, rapist, and traitor the gunman was writing about. It's also worth including how Trump described his own physical experience of the shooting during that same interview, because it adds important texture to the broader psychological portrait Mary Trump would go on to paint. He told O'Donnell he wasn't making it that easy for the Secret Service as they responded to the gunfire, saying he wanted to see what was actually happening rather than immediately comply with instructions to get down. "I was standing up and then turned around the opposite direction and started pretty much walking out, pretty tall, a little bent over, because, you know, I'm not looking to be standing too tall, but I was walking out," he said, before eventually being told, "Please go down to the floor," at which point he complied, along with Melania. That specific, almost theatrical account of his own posture during an active shooting situation, narrating his own tallness and bearing even in a moment of genuine physical danger, is precisely the kind of self-mythologizing detail that Mary Trump's broader framework would predict. Even describing a potentially life-threatening emergency, the underlying instinct remains image management. This is precisely the moment Mary Trump seized on, and her analysis, posted in a video on X, is worth walking through in full because it demonstrates exactly the kind of insider psychological read that no outside commentator could replicate.
Senator, first, Director Vogt has addressed that quote multiple times in this committee.
I'm asking you what you believe. Do you believe civil servants are the villains?
As I mentioned in my testimony, I think the OMB civil servants, who are the ones I work most closely with, as well as Director Vogt, who has a wonderful relationship with those civil servants, are among the best and brightest in the federal government.
Excellent. So you don't want to put them in trauma, do you?
Senator, that quote you're referring to, Director Vogt has addressed, is related to certain bureaucracies in the federal government.
It's just a question for you, not for Mr. Vogt. Do you want to put federal employees in trauma? Yes or no?
Senator, you're directly
I'm asking
referring
what
to
your view is. Do you think it's a good idea to put federal employees in trauma?
I work very well with the civil servants at OMB. The quote that you're referring to was a reference to weaponized bureaucracies.
Mr. Duncan, I'm asking you right now what your view is. Do you want to put federal employees into trauma? Yes or no?
Senator, like I said, I completely support the civil servants that work at OMB. And that quote that you're referring to has been taken out of context.
I was
and has been
asking
addressed
you
by the
your
director
view,
up here.
so it's interesting you don't want to provide a direct answer. So listen.
Let me show you what that cross-examination now looked like when you had Democratic Senator Slotkin talk about how the Trump regime officials are politicizing where budget funds go to for disaster relief, for research. They are stealing it from blue states, and they are not providing critical funding, and Hal Duncan would be someone responsible for doing that, and he seems in lockstep with that plan. Watch this cross-examination right here. Let's play it.
I want to ask to Mr. Duncan, you've had an interesting couple of days up here on the Hill, made some news, gone viral a couple of times. And I just feel like this idea that to get a federal grant, the rules have been rewritten so that you can reject any organization that represents, quote, anti-American values, and anyone who, quote, damages the reputation of the government. So you're going to be in an important position of power. You want the big job. You answer the big questions. If a university that was receiving federal dollars for a research grant into cancer, but they allowed a protest, a peaceful protest of the Iran war on their campus, would that be, quote, damaging to the reputation of the government?
Senator, I appreciate the question. As you know, with 2 CFR, it's signed off by all 41 agencies.
Right, but in your mind, you're asking to be a decision maker, right? So I understand there's a chain. I was a federal government employee for a long time, but you're up here for Senate confirmation, so it's a big job. Is a protest, a First Amendment peaceful protest on a college campus threaten the federal dollars that they are getting for cancer research under the rules that you will be enforcing? Yes or no?
Senator, you're asking a hypothetical question, but I would note that this
Well, we have protests. We do. I mean, I have University of Michigan and Michigan State. There are protests from time to time, that's for sure. So it's not hypothetical. This is something that literally in 15, 20 days you could be dealing with. Is a First Amendment protest on a college campus enough to be, quote, anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration?
In the hypothetical question that you're asking, related to grants for cancer research, this administration is committed to gold standard science and wants to advance the best cancer research that we possibly can.
Okay, so if they can have a protest on their campus, and I would just say slashing cancer research and slashing our science institutions around the country, and making us have to be literally 1/10 of the medical research that's going on in like places like China and Europe is not a way to uphold a gold standard for cancer research. And I say that for a woman who's, got cancer in her family. If a domestic violence shelter receives a federal grant, but they also post complaints about this administration's cutting of domestic violence funding, will that put them at risk of being labeled anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration?
Senator, again, you're asking hypothetical questions.
Top Democrats are asking Tulsi Gabbard to explain why she attended an FBI raid in Fulton County when agents seized ballots related to President Trump's 2020 election defeat. Here's what the president said when asked to explain.
Mr. President, what was Tulsi Gabbard doing at an election center in Georgia today?
She's working very hard on trying to keep the election safe, and she's done a very good job. And they, as you know, they got into the votes. You got a signed judge's order in Georgia, and you're going to see some interesting things happening. They've been trying to get there for a long time.
Joining me now is our friend, author and psychologist Mary Trump, also President Trump's niece. She hosts the Mary Trump Show podcast, and she's written books about how Trump's childhood shaped his first presidency. Welcome, Mary. Can you tell me what your uncle means by trying to keep the election safe, and what is he suggesting is yet to come?
I think what he means is
Mary suggested that her uncle was particularly incensed by the entire line of questioning, specifically because of who owns the network airing it. She noted that Trump had been exuberant when David Ellison and his father, Oracle CEO and major Republican donor Larry Ellison, completed their takeover of Paramount Skydance, CBS's parent company, the previous October, and that Trump had personally dined with the Ellisons and Norah O'Donnell just 3 days before this interview aired. Channeling what she characterized as her uncle's actual internal expectation going into that dinner and the subsequent interview, Mary said, You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes because my friends own CBS, and you're not allowed to confront me with any relevant information that makes me look bad, even if it wasn't necessarily about me. Sit with the precision of that psychological read for a moment. Mary Trump was not simply saying her uncle got angry. She was identifying a specific, transactional belief system underneath the anger. The expectation that ownership relationships and personal dinners should translate directly into softer journalism, and that any deviation from that expectation constitutes a personal betrayal rather than simply a journalist doing her job. This is exactly the kind of Colbert Paramount, Kimmel FCC dynamic we've documented extensively on this channel, except here it is being diagnosed in real time by someone who spent decades inside this specific man's psychology before any of us ever knew his name outside of New York tabloids. It's worth adding a bit more detail about the CBS ownership context Mary Trump was referencing, because it directly connects to a story we've covered on this channel before.
Now that's how you cross-examine and expose Donald Trump's nominees. Democrats in the United States Senate cross-examine Donald Trump's picks for critical federal government positions. Let me show you what went down. You have Democratic Senator Merkley cross-examining Trump's pick to be the Deputy White House Budget Director, Hal Duncan. Watch what went down here. Let's play this clip.
Do you believe the 2020 election was rigged?
I believe that Joe Biden was certified as the winner of the 2020 election.
He was certified, yes. But do you believe the election outcome was rigged?
Senator, I appreciate the question. As mentioned, I believe that Joe Biden was certified as the winner of the 2020 election.
Okay. Duly noted that you're not responding to the question.
Then you had Democratic Senator Tim Kaine make the point even clearer. Let's play it.
Was the 2024 presidential election rigged?
Senator, President Trump won the 2024 presidential election.
Yeah, folks, how about that? So he was asked twice, was the 2020 presidential election rigged? And he said President Biden was certified to be the winner. He wouldn't answer the question. Saying President Biden was certified as the winner of that election is like saying today is Tuesday, June 16. I mean, it's a fact. But he wouldn't acknowledge that President Biden won that race. Now, there's only one of two reasons, Mr. Duncan. You have either fallen victim to the conspiracy mindset that says that that election was rigged. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you shouldn't be let anywhere near the position you've been nominated for. Or, you know, President Biden won the election, but you're afraid of making an insecure president mad by acknowledging that fact. You answered so easily when I asked you the question about 2024. You didn't fight, you didn't evade, you didn't obscure, you didn't try to end run. You said President Trump won the election, which he did. He won the popular vote, he won the Electoral College. The answer was just as simple about 2020. The fact that you were unable to give the simple answer about 2020 raises real serious questions about you. Let me ask you this.
Then we move on to Democratic Senator Blumenthal, who was cross-examining one of Donald Trump's pick, Bartholomew, about the same types of questions. Here, let's play this clip right here.
Yes.
So let me test your independence. Who won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden as certified by the Senate?
No, Mr. Bartholomew. Who won the 2020 election? We have seen that script. By the way, you should check with the White House. That script has been abandoned. They have a new one.
Oh. Well, my understanding from the 2020 election is we had an election.
And
Joe
who won
Biden
it?
Joe Biden was certified the winner of that election. That is a fact.
Who won the popular vote?
From what I recall in reporting at the time, that was Joe Biden.
And who won the Electoral College in the 2020 election?
Again, my recollection, and he served as president, Joe Biden would have been certified the winner of the electoral.
Specifically regards to the Peace Prize, it doesn't have to be more complicated than the fact that Barack Obama got one. And he can't handle that. But there's a more general and serious issue here. Donald is a deeply insecure man. And I refer to him often as a black hole of need, and he's constantly in search of things to fill that void. Usually it's money, but sometimes it's recognition, and sometimes it's power. But the problem for us is that there is literally nothing that he can get. There is nothing that he can steal. There is no compliment he can receive that will make him feel better about himself. So he is always in search of the next thing, whether it's more money, whether it's more power or whether it's stealing property, territory from sovereign nations. This is
The Ellison family's acquisition of Paramount Skydance, completing the takeover of CBS's parent company, was itself the same underlying corporate transaction that produced the $16 million settlement and eventual cancellation of Stephen Colbert's Late Show, a story we detailed extensively in an earlier report. Trump had celebrated that ownership change enthusiastically at the time, specifically because David and Larry Ellison were understood within his orbit to be considerably friendlier to his interests than CBS's previous ownership structure. For Norah O'Donnell, working inside that exact same corporate environment, to then read a mass shooter's manifesto directly to Trump's face without softening it, represented precisely the kind of institutional independence Trump's own inner circle believed the ownership change was supposed to prevent, which is exactly why, according to Mary Trump's read, his fury in that moment carried an extra personal charge of betrayal on top of the ordinary discomfort of being asked a hard question. Let's talk about Mary Trump's broader, ongoing thesis about her uncle's public behavior, because the 60 Minutes meltdown was not an isolated incident in her analysis. It fits into a consistent framework she has been building publicly for years. Raw Story's coverage of her recent commentary captured what has become her running through line: that her uncle's behavior should never be understood as a series of isolated gaffes or momentary lapses in judgment, but rather as a consistent, unchanging display of exactly who he has always been. As she has put it directly, nothing about him has actually changed. The presidency simply gave a national and international stage to patterns of behavior that were fully formed decades before he ever descended that escalator to announce his first campaign. In one recent commentary, Mary specifically took aim at what Raw Story described as an attempt to demolish her uncle's real man self-image, using the family's own history as her evidence. She closes much of her public commentary with the same phrase, deployed almost as a mission statement: "Mockery is our superpower." A deliberate framing of ridicule not as cruelty for its own sake, but as a specific political weapon aimed at a man whose entire self-conception depends on being taken seriously and feared rather than laughed at.
The ultimate deciders of these grants will be the political employees at the agencies. I would imagine in this situation, it would likely be HHS.
The political employees? The political appointees like yourself?
The political appointees. OMB does not issue grants. We issue guidance, uniform guidance on grants. So I would not make decisions on a specific grant.
But if someone calls you, I mean, again, this is like, you can't want the big job, but then not answer the big questions. I think the idea that First Amendment activities would be, quote, anti-American or threatening the reputation of this administration, you understand that you're creating a climate of fear around things that are actually, it's the opposite of anti-American. It's the most American thing in the world, the First Amendment. So I think you've raised a lot of concerns in your testimony of the last couple of days, but the idea that the administration would put that kind of language out there to intimidate and scare people out of freedom of speech is something that is the most anti-American thing I've seen in a long time. Yield back.
Then I'll show you right here, Democratic Senator Gallego cross-examining another pick of Donald Trump, Charlton Allen, who's being picked to be on the Federal Labor Relations Authority, General Counsel. Let's take a look at what goes on here. Let's play it.
Mr. Allen, in the 1990s, you founded a conservative campus publication called the Carolina Review. If you look behind me, you see the front cover of an edition of the Carolina Review depicting Aaron Nelson, a Jewish candidate for student body president. Your magazine altered Nelson's photo depicting him with the horns and a pitchfork. Inside the article says the difference between Aaron Nelson is simple. He's Jewish. Yes or no, Mr. Nelson, do you stand by this depiction?
Well, first of all, in terms...
Turn your mic on. Your mic.
Sorry. I'm Mr. Allen, not Mr. Nelson. But in terms of that cover, I would, if I were 30 years ago advocating for the Review, I would say don't run that cover. I think it was a mistake. That said, if you look at full context of the article, you're taking a quote out of context.
Okay, so I may take the quote out of context, but that's not being taken out of context, right? The pitchfork with the horns?
Right.
Right. Because that's kind of hard to get out of context.
In terms of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, our chief rival was the Blue Devils, still are the Blue Devils. And the cartoonist's intention was to make an analogy to that.
is that he is desperate to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And he's going to use all of the means at his disposal, which are not inconsiderable. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard, last I checked, is not in the business of checking on election integrity or security. I think that the bigger mission here for Donald is to undermine the American people's faith in free and fair elections. This is something he's been engaged in for years now. And again, now he has a lot more power in order to do that. It's a very worrisome sign. Tulsi Gabbard is the director of national intelligence. So unless they suspect some foreign interference that didn't benefit Donald in 2020, she has no business being there. And I think the American people do deserve answers about that.
But 2020 is 6 years ago. Why is Trump unable to accept his defeat after many investigations and rulings prove the election results were correct? Why can't he let it go?
He can't let anything go that paints him as a loser. And even though he's back in the Oval Office, even though he has more money now because of the corruption in the Trump regime.
Here is the deeper truth sitting underneath everything we've covered tonight, and it connects directly to nearly every other story we've told on this channel about the people who know Donald Trump best turning into his most persistent and most devastating critics. Mary Trump did not need a comedy writer's room, a legal team, or a campaign war chest to build one of the most durable, most consistently accurate critiques of this presidency currently in circulation. She needed only what she already had. A childhood spent inside the same house, a doctorate that gave her the professional vocabulary to name what she witnessed, and the willingness to keep saying it publicly, year after year, regardless of how many times her own family tried to dismiss her as simply an estranged, embittered relative. When Norah O'Donnell read 4 sentences from a mass shooter's manifesto and watched the President of the United States immediately, defensively confirm exactly who he believed those sentences were describing, Mary Trump did not need to speculate about what was happening inside her uncle's mind in that moment. She had already spent an entire lifetime learning exactly how that mind works, long before the rest of the country ever had to. This is USA Press. If tonight's deep dive connected the full arc of Mary Trump's ongoing, documented reckoning with her own family in a way you hadn't seen laid out together before, hit that like button right now. It costs you 1 second, and it puts this reporting in front of thousands more people who need the complete picture, especially given how rare it is for this level of first-hand, professionally credentialed testimony to exist about any sitting president's formative psychology. Subscribe to USA Press and turn on notifications, because between the ongoing crypto earnings questions, the continued fallout from the 60 Minutes interview, and whatever Mary Trump says next about the family that shaped this presidency, this story is nowhere close to finished. Drop a comment and tell us. Was every single one of them was a destroyed human being? Or the real-time read on the 60 Minutes meltdown, the single sharpest thing Mary Trump has ever said about her uncle? And do you think a trained clinical psychologist who grew up inside this family carries more credibility on these questions than any outside political commentator ever could? We want to hear where you land. Stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, the people who know you longest are always the hardest to lie to.